Welcome to Tilly's Trans Tuesdays. This week's topic is tough, and I've talked about it before and it was awkward, and I think it's still going to be awkward, so let's just dive right into the deep end with Mother's Day, aka being a trans parent. Hi, I'm Tilly Bridges, your host, and I'm joined by my writing partner, my best friend, my wife, our token cis representation, the only person I've met that I ever wanted to have a kid with, Susan Bridges.
Simple, accurate.
Definitely accurate. Our returning guest is Mae Dean. She began drawing real-life comics in late 1999 at the age of 18 after she realized that the in-jokes between her and her friends could make for an interesting daily comic. She termed it semi-autobiographical because as frequently as the comic was mundane and based on everyday happenings, it would also delve into the wildly fictional with space travel, alternate universes, and homicidal desktop computers. The strip recently celebrated its 23rd anniversary, and though it takes frequent hiatuses, will likely remain going for decades yet to come. In 2018, at the age of 37, Mae finally realized that the feelings she had been dealing with for most of her life were, in fact, gender dysphoria. She chronicled this realization in the comic in a 3-week storyline entitled Epiphany, where her character, then presenting male, had a conversation with her inner self. Since then, she has depicted the reality of coming out to her partner, transitioning, and navigating the world as a trans woman, all with the focus on the humor and joy that so often gets overlooked in the trans experience. She has recently taken up the vocation of writer of short autobiographies in a third-person perspective, a career which, while fulfilling, she expects to be moving on from by the end of the sentence. But she hasn't because now I've read it twice and I'm thrilled about it because might be the best bio I've ever read. Welcome back, Mae.
They keep dragging me in. I try to be out, they keep dragging me back in.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep hitting you up to write me new bios of yourself for like the foreseeable future. Okay, so for you, what has been one of the most surprising things about your transition?
Surprising?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a really hard one. I think what's been, well, I kind of touched on this in the previous episode, but what's been very surprising is that people have largely treated me very nicely. I was not expecting that. I was expecting to be just absolutely ridiculed. It was just one of those things where I expected hate. And while I get it online from people who don't know me, I don't care about those people. The people who do know me, 99% of them have been wonderful.
Yeah, same.
My stepdad, we no longer speak because he's a jerk, but it's, it is what it is. Oh, it's fine. I've moved on from that, but largely I'm surprised by the fact that people have been very open and accepting and just kind of, pretty cool about it.
Yeah. I think it can be hard because there are definitely, parts of the country and world where it is much harder to be out as trans. But also, I think what's important is that even though things are scary with all these anti-trans laws, that the people pushing them and the general population that is actually anti-trans is really small in number. It seems like there's so many more of them than there actually are. But we even saw in the 2022 elections, everybody who campaigned on anti-trans rhetoric lost their campaigns. It's not a winning position. It's the general population either supports us or just doesn't care. They're just people, leave them alone, right? So yeah, it's important to remember.
We wish they did care.
Yeah, they could care a little more.
Caring
is better than hating.
Favor.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a mess, but yeah. Well, what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is just starting their transition, or something that you wish you knew going in that would have helped you?
I think the best advice I can give anyone starting the transition is just remember it's not a race. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
I know you want to get where you're going to be. You will get there. It's going to take longer than you want it to. but it's going to be shorter than you think it will be.
Yeah, it feels like it'll be forever.
Sometimes. It does. When you're in the midst of it, when you just start hormones, if you are starting hormones, it is going to feel like an eternity in the moment.
Yeah, they work really slow.
They do. But you look back and you realize that like that was a blip in your life, especially when you get to be in your 40s or whatever. Those years are fast, they go by. And the moment the struggles, embrace them, feel them, but understand that those struggles are temporary.
Yeah.
And that can be a real hard one for it's advice I wish I had back then.
Yeah, right. I remember starting hormones and it was really scary, even though nothing happens for a while. But then, like a week or two in, I'm like, well, nothing's happening. What? I want to get out and push my transition, and you can't make it go any faster. So
I think it was 5 or 6 weeks before I noticed literally anything.
Oh, it took me like 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything like a feeling.
Yeah.
Tingles, things like that. I didn't get anything for like 6 weeks. And the whole time up to that point, because you haven't had a blood test, you haven't had any of these things, you're like, the dosage is wrong. It's not working on me. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And you get so up in your own head about these things that sometimes you lose perspective on that. Again, just take it easy. Don't rush yourself. Don't push yourself to where you're uncomfortable. For me personally, I resisted. I didn't wear feminine clothes until I felt like I would be able to wear them without sending my own dysphoria into a spiral.
Yeah. I had to trade on and off for a while with boy mode, and like once every 2 to 3 days I'd be in girl mode and then I'd have to go back. And
I didn't even until I had breasts, I didn't even try anything.
Yeah.
Because it was just like I knew it was going to send me off. And then the second I did, I haven't worn anything with a neckline higher than my collarbone in 4 years. Like this is I have to vent my excess heat from here. You gotta keep it free.
Yeah, it's weird. I have like women's cut t-shirts now that I can wear, and I like the way I look in them, but I still do not like the high collars. I'm always like, I wish it would just be lower because it feels a little too boyish, even though that's ridiculous because it's just a shirt.
Your brain is a fun organ. It's just a fun organ to have.
Yeah, it's our best friend and our worst enemy.
I just want to say too, like all those people, those TERFs out there saying people are transitioning too quickly. And it's like,
that's impossible.
That's literally impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Again, stupid. Stupidest people alive.
It's hard for me to engage in arguing with, I know I'm off topic here. It's hard to engage in arguing with TERFs because their arguments are so ludicrously out of bounds. They don't make any sense.
Right.
So it's like, I can't engage with this and argue with it because it's factually bonkers. And I'm not going to convince them. So I have to just mentally like, they're crazy and just write it off. I have to that's hard. It's hard advice to take.
It is. And sometimes I'm still like, I want to yell at them, but I'm like, no, just block and move on. Block and move on.
You're not gonna actually change anything by engaging with that kind of behavior, unfortunately.
Yeah. Too true. Okay, so remind people where they can find you online.
Well, when I'm actively doing a comic, it's at reallifecomics.com. I know I joke about the hiatuses, but I am on a hiatus that I've been on since November, mostly because I had a lot of work going on. So I haven't done the comic since November. I'm going to, I promise.
I just promise, have a lot you heard it here.
Going on. I went on a 3-year hiatus. I came back. I sometimes just wander out the door and come back. So if you go to reallifecomics.com, you can read my whole archive going back to 1999. Don't judge me. I was 18 when I started the comic. And on social media of any sort, generally Twitter, Instagram. I don't really post Instagram much. Mastodon, any of those. It's Mae, God, M-A-E, God have mercy. And I love a pun.
Excellent. Don't we all? Okay. All right, so there are 2 parts to this week's topic that are separate but invariably kind of linked together in terms of being trans. My own parents and being a parent myself. I became a parent before I transitioned or even realized or understood my own transness. I'm sure this is very different for every trans person and every trans parent. And for trans folks who transition before becoming parents, it's also probably a very different experience. But as always, I can only talk about my own experiences, and I do not speak for everyone. But for a lot of trans people, relationships with our parents can be fraught. Obviously, because a lot of us have parents who do not and will not accept us for who we are. My father died when I was very young, and he never got to know the real me and who I really am. I have almost no memories of him, and some of the few I do have are tainted by his death at a very young age, and the awfulness of the lies my mother made me believe about him. It's a whole complex issue all its own, which we'll have an episode on later this summer. But relatedly, wondering what it might be like if I somehow got to show him who I really am and what I might hope to get out of that is something Susan and I explored in a short comic in the Color of Always anthology, which is available now in comic shops and bookstores. It's full of excellent stories about queer love in all its forms, and you should definitely check it out. My mom is an entirely different issue that's painful in its own way. I've mentioned in several of these how my relationship with her was fraught. I went into this a little in the Trans Tuesday on the past and why it can haunt those of us who transition as adults. That was also the second episode of this podcast. My mom and I did not get along. We did not see eye to eye on basically anything, including some major decisions she and my stepdad made regarding my much younger siblings that I strongly disagreed with and made sure my feelings were known. My mother and her mother were abandoned by my mom's father when she was very young, and I'm sure that played heavily into how overly controlling and manipulative she became. She wanted to find a way to force everyone to stay near her for her entire life. And of course, that's not the way it works. We all have our own hopes and desires for our lives, and sometimes that takes us away from home. We all have to find our own path, but she was much more interested in picking a path for us and getting mad if we deviated from it. She also had these roles that she assigned all of us in her head, and deviation from those was also a problem. So there was the smart one and the sporty one and on, and it led to all sorts of problems. As seems obvious, she was also stridently anti-gay. I'm always hesitant to say things like this because a person's gender is their own business, but she was my mother and my life at home with her was very rough. And I see in her so much of what I saw in myself, but only in one way, gender dysphoria. I can't diagnose her with that, obviously, but I see so many of the signs. She hated being thought of as a woman. Several times she told me she wished she was a man, but it's just a joke. Ha ha ha, how silly. She hated anything associated with femininity. She hated photos of herself, never wanted to be in them, never felt they looked like her. I'm not saying she was trans, although she might have been, but even being a woman who just liked to be butch or what have you was so far outside the realm of things that she could have ever accepted about herself. What I'm 100% sure of is it made her life awful, and that manifested in 100 different ways.
It manifested all over you.
It sure did. Any deviation from the gender binaries in us kids was met with concern and ridicule and anger, despite the fact that she herself dressed in the most gender-neutral way that she could every day of her life. She also hated femininity so much she never even really let my sisters explore it, not while I lived at home with them anyway. So femininity was bad for all of them, but don't be a boy, and you very much are girls. There was a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. As a reminder, the gender binary is part of our societal false dichotomy that messes us all up in countless ways. There's an essay on that at tilliestrandstuesdays.com, and it was episode 11 of this show. So, Mae, you actually talked about this just a little bit back there, but I was going to ask you what your relationship with your parents has been like with coming out in terms of your transness.
So I mentioned it earlier, and that may have been intentional, but so I first told my mom, and she was wonderful, like surprised, obviously. I was 37 at the time. Yeah, 37 at the time. And she was surprised, but she could not have been better.
That's so awesome.
She was excited for me and all that.
My heart.
And my dad was surprised, but he was supportive and just said, just be patient with me. It's going to take me some time to get used to it. And I understand that. It took me time to get used to it.
Yeah, right.
It took him time to get used to it. And then he did. Partially it was hard because during COVID, I came out to him, I want to say about a year before COVID, and then I didn't start transitioning until COVID hit. So he didn't get to see me in person for like a year and a half. And that must have been hard for him. But again, my dad, we talk like every day on the phone. We could not be better. My stepdad didn't address the situation for a long time. My mom told him, and I told her it was okay. He didn't address the situation for a long time. And then when we went over there for Halloween 2020, he kept calling me Greg. And he said stuff like, oh, you're always gonna be Greg to me. I'm like, well, no, that's not the case. And I was standing up for myself. Liz was standing up for me way more. My wife, Liz, was standing up for me way more than I was. But he was saying things like, I support you. You can dress however you want, but the but always came in.
Yeah, that's not support then.
And we left. Yeah. And I just took the kids out and went to the truck. Liz stayed behind because she's my pit bull, and she's
mine, Susan. Yeah.
She just fought tooth and nail. I heard after the fact things he said, like, don't I get a say in this? And she says no, and
no, you don't.
That's not how this works.
Yeah. The one that I always laugh about because of the wording he used was, he's got a Johnson, for Pete's sake. And,
oh my God.
That makes me it just makes me laugh hard at this point. I had a fraught relationship with my stepdad in the first place.
Yeah.
As a kid, we did not have the best of I'm not going to go into deep detail about it, but we didn't have the greatest relationship. And then we kind of came back from it, and I forgave him, and he made amends, and then this happened. And I haven't seen him or spoken to him since October of 2020, which is hard because my mom and I had a very close relationship. We talk, but it has to be kind of when he's not around.
Yeah.
They have since moved to Fresno, which is about 3 hours away, which is fine. They were planning on doing that anyway. But now it's like, I don't really see her that much anymore. And, because of him, her relationship with me and my kids is not what I wanted it to be. And that sucks. And what the truth of the matter is that if he was willing to apologize, I would be willing to come to some sort of a mid ground, but he's very stubborn and will not do that. And it's kind of the way it's going to be, I think.
Yeah. I'm so
That's
sorry.
hard.
It's really hard.
It is okay. It doesn't affect me in my mind. I've written it off. I'm okay with it now. I can speak. It doesn't bother me anymore. Even then at the time, I was pissed at him, so it didn't bother me. I've only had a few times where it was like, I miss my mom,
Yeah.
That's about it. But beyond that, my relationship with my mom and my dad, even my in-laws, my wife's parents are older. They're in their 80s. They've, I don't think, ever misgendered me. They've been very, sweet about the whole thing. They don't understand, but they don't have to, because they don't.
Yeah.
They just have to treat me like who I am, and
Right.
that's what they do, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's all I would like from my in-laws, but I do not get that. But that's a different topic. Yeah, it is what it is, right?
That's the problem with the trans experience, is that, we're all so vastly different because of the people in our lives. Some people have great experiences and some people have rotten experiences, and we've learned to, I think, take it all in. We know the field. We know how it goes.
Yeah.
So we all say, I'm sorry, but we know.
We know. It's rough.
My dad is nice to you.
On the surface.
Yeah.
But he's a Fox News lover, so I do not believe he actually accepts me. He just doesn't.
But he always calls you by the correct name.
Well.
And now he's the one sending all the cards, since my mother doesn't want to talk to you ever or about you ever.
Yeah, she pretends I don't exist.
She's on thin ice anyway. I mean, she's like the worst person in the world, pretty much. Like,
just tossing it out there on a podcast.
Really the worst.
Okay. Wow, yeah.
Like, she's a terrible human being.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's funny, by the way, is my dad's a Fox News watcher, but he's not like a Fox News. He doesn't soak it in. He kind of watches it partially out of hate watching, but partially just because he's a little more to the right. But I'll debate stuff with him all the time. It's great, but he still loves and accepts me for who I am. So I you know what? If you want to watch that crap, go ahead. Don't vote for the people that want to kill me. We're okay.
That would be nice.
That would be a good start.
That'd
That's
be
like
great.
the minimum.
They're not going to do that.
That's all I asked for. No, he actually votes independent. He's not a fan of the right wing, but he's definitely not a fan of the left wing either. So he votes independent, and I'm like, that's all I can ask for. Do your best.
Well, I was telling you all of that about my parents just to give you the context for this one vital piece of information. If my mother was alive when I came out as trans, and a gay trans woman at that, she never would have spoken to me again. She barely spoke to me as it was. She already poisoned the very idea of me and the minds of my siblings from the moment I moved out, simply because I broke the mold she'd set for me. She told them outright lies about me, just made shit up, and anything I ever did that broke her idea of the man that I was supposed to be also got used as fodder against me. She also didn't like Susan at all because Susan helped me get out of that horrible situation I was in.
I don't know if I helped a lot.
You did.
You got me.
I
over
was
there.
just like, this is messed up.
That outside opinion. Like, okay, this is not normal. That helped.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother told me once that he and I spent the entire day talking to each other in very bad British accents, calling each other by stuffy British women's names. I have no memory of that, but it definitely sounds like something I would have done. I'm a goof. But my mother hated it, of course, because we were boys, and afterward told my brother that Susan was disappointed in us for doing that. Like, what the actual hell, right? She just made crap up to justify all the feelings she had, and that's going to really mess up your kids. I was not given any room to explore my feelings around gender as a kid. It messed me up for life. I lived with horrid dysphoria for most of my life because of it. I was miserable and alone and trapped for life. Mae, I wanted to ask you, if you feel comfortable talking about it, what your experience with dysphoria was like, or if you had dysphoria and how it would manifest for you.
It doesn't hit me hard anymore.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like 90% of the time, like I literally don't have it. But
yeah, that's awesome.
my experience with dysphoria early on was a tough one. And that's actually why I transitioned so slowly, because anytime I started to see myself as the stereotypical idea of man in dress, it made me recoil.
Sure.
And that refers back to the previous week's episode of internalized transphobia, but it was a hard one because it's your brain saying that's not what you're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
That's what dysphoria, that's not what this is supposed to be like. And it made me take it slow. I'm actually grateful it did for my own personal, because every time I got past a block, it was like it was gone. And it was almost like I was chipping away bit by bit at those feelings. Now, when I say about dysphoria, one of the things in the comic I touch on, and okay, let's take a second. Let me go back. I'm rambling a little bit. Let's go back.
Okay.
When I first read that tweet that I mentioned by Kat, which, if you're not familiar with the comic or not familiar with the tweet, it's essentially, if you're under the impression that you're a cis man but have always wanted to transition, and your only reason you haven't transitioned is because you're afraid you'd be an ugly girl, that's dysphoria.
Yep.
You're literally a trans girl already. And it was like all of a sudden, like I got hit like a wall, like boom, like literally my ears started ringing, because I had to like come to terms with, holy shit, it was like I was being given permission to feel what I needed to feel. And all of a sudden, I woke up the next day, and I keep saying, like, the world felt like it was in color. The Wizard of Oz. I walked out the door and it was in color. And it's hard to describe how literal that felt. I literally felt like I was perceiving the world brighter.
Yeah.
And I started to take care. I started to shave every day. I started to, this is going to sound gross, I started to brush my teeth more frequently. I started to shower more frequently.
Yeah.
Not consciously, but I realized that I cared about myself.
Yep.
Which I hadn't before. And I've slowly come to realize that disregard for self is an externalization of dysphoria.
Yep.
Not caring about how you look and caring about how you take care of yourself is like, it's like self-punishment for not feeling how you want to feel. And that's a very weird symptom of dysphoria. We always think it's more like, you're like, oh, I don't like the way I look. And it's more of like, I don't relate to who I am.
Yeah.
And that's a weird experience. But once I finally got past that, it's been easier to move on. And like I said, day to day, I don't experience it anymore.
Yeah, it's really abated a lot for me too, especially just in the last year. It's been kind of amazing. I wasn't sure I'd ever actually get here.
Yeah.
If you want to see the ways dysphoria impacted my ability to exist in this world, you can see the Trans Tuesday on Into the Unknown, aka What is Happening When the Lack of Dysphoria Made Life Entirely Brand New for Me. And if you want to see the hidden ways it muted my life and kept all that this world has to offer from me in ways I didn't even realize and I'm still discovering, you can see the Trans Tuesday on Freeing Up My Brain, aka Lunch with Tilly. But can you imagine doing that to your kid? Forcing them through dysphoria because you won't let them try different clothes or hairstyles or anything outside of the false dichotomy of the gender binary because it makes you uncomfortable? It seems like the antithesis of parenting to me. I've talked to many parents of trans kids who've told me that these Trans Tuesdays have helped them understand their kids, and I always make sure to tell them how vitally important it is that they're learning and supporting their kids. And I'm so glad some trans kids have parents like that. It makes a literal world of difference. Something like 80% of trans kids attempt suicide because dysphoria is awful and they exist in a society and often a home life where they feel trapped with no way out. See the Trans Tuesday on trans kids and the intake exam for more on that. All of that being said, I have no frame of reference for being a parent myself. All my life, I was fascinated and entirely mystified by friends who liked their parents. That's a thing that could happen. It's so alien to me. And to be clear, I like my father very much based on the things I've learned about him from his family. But again, he was so poisoned in my mind by my mother, just as I have been in my siblings' minds, that for a long time I didn't care about him at all. For years as a kid, I actively hated him for abandoning me, when he actually did nothing of the sort. It was my mother who ripped me away from him and kept him out of my life. But our wonderful son was born before I learned who my father really was. And even still, I don't have that firsthand knowledge of what he was like as a parent. So I didn't know at all how to be a parent once our kid was born. I mean, I knew how to care for an infant and a child because my mother had me babysitting all 7 of my siblings all the time. In fact,
Which was a great relief to me.
Well, we're getting right there, yes. In fact, due to all of my experience with kids, that Susan and I decided I'd be the stay-at-home parent while she returned to the day job. And oof, did we get blowback on that from her parents because I was the man and should get a real job. As if raising a kid isn't a real job or harder than almost anything else. As if a man, which I'm not, couldn't do it right. As if a woman couldn't work and provide for her family. Never mind I had the kid experience, and never mind Susan was making more money than I ever had. None of that mattered. All they were concerned about was upholding the false dichotomy of the gender binary. How weird it is to be more concerned about that than the person with more experience being with the kid than the person with more earning potential making the money.
And yeah, we had that too with my dad literally said, well, you'll never make as much money as a man.
Well, that's society's fault, but doesn't mean you can't support us.
I make so much more money than he ever made. He has no idea.
Than your dad, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, I didn't understand it then, and I still don't understand it now. It's utterly sexist and reductive and ultimately harmful to women and men and non-binary people. But though I had plenty of experience with kids, I didn't know how to be a good parent because it was just so foreign to me. I think maybe I've done okay. I know I've messed up at times. Hopefully I've been pretty good overall, but that's for a kid to decide and not me.
I mean, too, I didn't have a lot of good...
Yeah,
we didn't really have good examples.
We made it.
Like, I learned about respectful disagreements from Star Trek. Like, I didn't...
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a quick secret, Tilly, is that literally every good parent thinks that they've screwed their kid up. And if you don't think you screwed your kid up, you're probably screwing your kid up.
Yeah, actually, I think you're making a lot of sense because people always say, like, I wonder if I'm one of the bad people, or I wonder if I could have been, if I wasn't kind enough or whatever. I'm like, it's the people who don't wonder that
Exactly.
that are not kind enough and not good enough. If you're asking that question, you are one of the good
If I
people.
sat here and said, "Oh, I'm a great parent," that's how you'd know I'm not in touch with my kid at all.
Yeah, right. So often raising our kid, I just thought about what I'd wished my own parents would have done for me in a given situation, and I tried to do that rather than repeat any of what they actually did. But I know I've made mistakes, we all do, and some of them still do pain me. But we've always been supportive of him in every way we could. He tells us he's a straight boy, and that's fine, but if he ever discovers that he isn't, that's also fine.
Has he told us that?
Yes, I've asked him.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
We let him explore the things he wants to explore and be who he wants to be, even if that's something that we personally can't fathom. He has
And
no-
also, when he doesn't want to do things, we let
Yes.
him
Do that, which is not something I was allowed to do as a
Yeah.
child.
or me. Yeah, so he has no interest in creative pursuits, which is very weird, as Susan and I basically never stopped writing and creating. One of my absolute favorite things was when I came out to him. We were in the kitchen making dinner together, standing next to each other at the stove, and I was super nervous about it. Now, we live in California, and kids actually learn about trans people in health class. And we talked with him about trans people and gay people, so he'd know it's just another way some people are, and there's nothing wrong with it. So coming out to him should go well, right? But still, you just never know. So I worked up the courage and I said, hey, I know you've learned about trans people in school, and I just want you to know that I am one. I'm actually a woman, and I'll be transitioning. So I'll be wearing women's clothes, and we'll start growing breasts, and I'll change my name. And, I went through all of this, and his reply was, okay. And that was it. I was like, oh, why are you even talking to me? You're my parent, and you're so uncool, and I do not care that you're trans.
He is a few words.
Yes. It was hilarious, but it was also absolutely beautiful and perfect. He accepted me without question, and since has even stood up for me, 2 family members, in a way that I know was very hard for him. But he did it, and just the thought of it still makes me a little teary. I've never been prouder of him. He's such a wonderful kid. So what was it like for you, Mae, coming out to your kid? How did that go?
She was at the time 7.
Okay.
And my wife and I think we probably overthought it a lot.
Sure.
We waited a little bit to tell her. And when we did what we decided to do, we bought a book called Red, which is a
that's the crayon one
book, the crayon book.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I have not read it. I've seen it and heard people talk about it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's essentially about a blue crayon that has a red label.
Yeah.
And it thinks it's red, and it gets, it's trying so hard to draw red things, strawberries and apples, and getting frustrated because they don't look like they're supposed to look. And then at some point in the book, one of the other crayons tells it to try drawing water or something blue, and it does it marvelously because it realizes at some point it's not red, it's blue. And when it tries to draw blue things, it does a really good job. And I thought that was a really good kind of mental allegory.
It is.
For why we sometimes struggle with it. And so we read this book to her, and afterwards I looked at her and said, I also had the wrong label on. And she says, yeah. I said, my label said boy. And her face, she took a second and she was like she got excited. Like you could see her brain working through it. It was really cute.
Oh my God.
She was really excited that daddy was going to be a girl now. And, that was kind of it. She's been, since then, she's now 12, almost 12. She's been kind of, I won't say my biggest supporter, but she's been, because she hates me half the time.
That's their job.
I know, that's their job. That's their job.
Yeah.
She's an early teenager. She is unwaveringly supporting me.
That's beautiful.
Some of her friends at school might not get it sometimes, and she's like, what don't you get? I don't understand it. She never misgenders, never misnames, ever.
Aw.
She's been great. And now I am a little different than a lot of trans people. I'm still daddy. I'm still dad. I will always be dad. That's who I am. And that's not because it's a role thing. It's more like I feel more like a dad. I make the stupid dad jokes. I do the dad stuff. Dad is a title. It's not a gender. So I am dad. My daughter can say, I talked to my dad and she said this, and it flows off the tongue for her. And I'm a staunch defender of being dad. I'm dad. I get Father's Day. That's me. My wife gets Mother's Day.
That's
and
cool.
I'm okay with that. Okay. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. Our son doesn't call me mom, and to be fair, he doesn't really call Susan mom either. He doesn't call either of us anything most of the time. We've had talks about it, but I've never been able to figure out what I'd like him to call me. I told him that dad was still fine, but I don't really like it. It's what he's called me his entire life. Again, on the rare instances he's actually called me anything. And I know he wouldn't mean anything awful or be trying to misgender me when he uses it. But I personally don't like it much because society, again, tells us that it implies this maleness that I don't want to be associated with.
Right.
But I also felt for a long, long time like he couldn't call me mom. And part of that is because if his mom was Susan, how could it also be me? And I'm sure part of that was also my own internalized transphobia, not believing that was a word that was allowed to be applied to me. Please see the Trans Tuesday on that for a much deeper dive on all the ways internalized transphobia messes with our heads. It was also episode 18 of this podcast just last week.
And yeah, we tried to come up with something and we just gave up after a while.
Yeah, it was
Like, this isn't working.
It's not
I thought about it briefly at the outset and
Yeah.
quickly came to the realization that I just didn't mind it.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit of time to separate dad from being male.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
more to me like a name, and names aren't inherently gendered.
Right.
So it's like it doesn't bother me. It can be awkward when she's talking to people and they don't get it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, or in the comic, she'll always refer to me as daddy in the comic, and people will jump down my throat, which is weird because I'm the one who wrote it.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, again, everybody's different. You have to remember that the trans experience is not a singular thing.
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
It is the human experience, which is different for literally every one of us.
Yeah.
Don't assume that you know how things go because you know one trans person.
Yeah. I like you saying that it was that you see it as more of a title, and that she'll say dad and then use the correct pronouns afterwards. I really like that. I never thought of it that way before. So you may have just flipped a switch in my head. So thank you.
Woo-hoo!
You're awesome.
It's how I came to deal with it. And it works for me. My son calls me daddy. He's 3. He doesn't know any different.
Yeah. So yeah, when I was thinking about this, I was like, how do you even define motherhood, right? Because it's not just cis women who give birth, because people can adopt and earn the title of mom in your life, even if they've never even officially adopted you. And there are surrogates and, things like that too. So, but how would our son differentiate between Susan and me? I mean, he's too old now for her to be mom and for me to be mommy or mama or whatever. So, what do we do? What do non-binary parents do? I don't know. Why do our words for parents have to be so horribly gendered?
Oh, right. The false dichotomy.
Again.
Yeah.
So Mother's Day is kind of horribly complex, weird, and slightly awful for me. My mother died over a decade ago, and we had a fairly terrible relationship. And my son doesn't call me mom, and I wasn't sure I felt like a mom. Do I want to be a mom? I don't know if I want to be dad, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be a parent.
And parent feels like really...
It's clinical.
It does
Yeah.
feel a little like...
But being his parent has been one of the most wonderful, difficult, challenging, special, beautiful things in my life, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But is there a word for me and what I am to him, for him to call me or refer to me by? It'd be pretty damned weird for him to say something like, my parent just texted me this terrible meme, So what do we do? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe I have more of an idea now than before, though, because Mae is awesome. But I've been out publicly for nearly 3 years, and it's been over 3 years into my full transition. It's been over 8 years since my personal transition started. And I still don't have an answer, and maybe I never will. We'll see. But thank you for being here, Mae. You have been wonderfully insightful.
I try to be. I'm not usually, but
You're having a good day.
I've had my caffeine for the day, so
Yeah. There you go. Well, what I do know is that I changed my social media bios from saying I was a parent to saying I was a mom, and it made me feel kind of good. It felt kind of right. Our son doesn't have to call me that. If he did, it might be great and wonderful, but also weird and complicated. For now, I think calling myself a mom and knowing that I love my kid more than all the stars in the universe and want nothing more than for him to be who he wants to be and to be safe, happy, and loved is enough. And maybe that's all it needs to be. Tilly Bridges, end transmission. Tilly's Trans Tuesdays is hosted by Tilly Bridges and Susan Bridges, with audio editing and sound mixing by Jillian Morgan. Special thanks to Daisy and Jane for the use of Sorry Not Sorry as our show's theme music. Please stop by and show your support at daisyandjane.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/daisyandjane. You can find me at Tilly Bridges on Twitter and Hive, on Mastodon at tillybridges@mastodon.social, at facebook.com/TillySBridges, and on Insta at HeckYeahTillyBridges. and you can find Susan on all of those at Susan L. Bridges. The Google Doc and social media versions of this week's topic and all past topics are available at tillystranstuesdays.com. For more information, visit pendantaudio.com. Thanks for listening.